QPIRG Concordia recently offered a walking tour of campus to let students know about the radical and progressive history of their university. Are you aware of the 1969 Computer Center occupation or the 1987 Day of Action Against Tuition Hikes? Well, you will be after taking the radical walking tour with QPIRG.
On Tuesday, January the 18th, a group of students met at QPIRG to start a radical walking tour of Sir George William campus and learn more about Concordia history and student protest over the years.
Hi, my name is Jaggy. I'm a staffer at the Quebec Public Interest Research Group. You're in our space, one of our spaces right now. And we organize from time to time a radical walking tour of the Concordia campus. The purpose of the radical walking tour, it's multifold. There are many purposes. It's to get people acquainted with some of the history of Concordia, especially the history as it relates to struggles and campaigns and initiatives for social and environmental justice. It's also meant to look critically at campus space and the way we use the space, the way Concordia fits into the city, and how Concordia very much is a contested space, both in terms of the vision of what kind of university it should be, and also in terms of how the space ends up getting used. Right away, one of the important things to understand about Concordia University is that it has a very radical, subversive history, a place where students were often the people who went to school, had higher education for the first time. It was a place where working class people could go to school. Sir George Williams, prior to being a university, was a night school where people could improve and get university credit, which they otherwise couldn't. Universities just a generation ago were relatively exclusive places where it was difficult to get a higher education. And institutions like Concordia were able to provide that to working class people, to people who were going to school, getting higher education for the first time, and also people who were in other ways marginalized or discriminated against. For example, McGill University used to have, right up until the late 50s and early 60s, a quota against Jewish students. So many of those working class Jewish students came here to Sir George Williams University, which eventually became Concordia University. As well, there are some key moments, and I guess two chapters in the history of Concordia are the 1969 Computer Center riot, which was provoked by movements against racism, not just on campus, but linked to the Black Power struggle and the Civil Rights movement. As well, in 2002, there was the infamous Netanyahu riot, or as some people call it, the Netanyahu uprising, which was linked to student movements that were working on issues in solidarity with Palestine, but more generally anti-war and a struggle for social justice. Some people want to promote and are promoting and have been promoting a corporate model of the university, an elite model of the university. And what the Radical Walking Tour, what we're trying to do is show people that that's still contested, and we should contest that, and we should struggle against that by understanding some of those chapters in our history. A lot of the organizations and institutions on campus that I think people look at very positively exist because people struggled and fought for them within the last 10, 15 years. You know, and one example of that is People's Potato. There is a corporate monopoly on campus on providing food on campus. It goes to Chartwells. The food's not very good. Linked to that corporate monopoly are other corporate exclusivity contracts that allow for Pepsi to have their beverages on campus, that allow for bottled water to be on campus. So even when we talk about what we drink and what we eat and how we can access food, that's highly politicized. And there is one space that's been reclaimed, a common area on the 7th floor where people can gather. That kitchen has basically been squatted 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago. Students began cooking food off campus at a local church and bringing it onto campus to deal with student poverty and the fact that when you're hungry, you don't study very well. Food and having food and sharing that food and eating it together and preparing it together are some of the basic social functions. And on this campus, the way the university sees it, the way the administration sees it, the way corporations see it, is that's a corporate thing. That's something that's become specialized rather than something that we could share. We should be having a social justice model, a community model, a model where members of the community decide those spaces. In the meantime, though, we're talking about, you know, those contested areas, and having Frigo Vert and People's Potato allows us to have another vision of food politics, and also claiming space, and also talking about student poverty. having a center like the 2110 Center allows us to talk about issues around gender advocacy, talk about issues around feminism. Those are things we shouldn't take for granted. It's because people struggle for them that they exist. And in the meantime, we should be concerned about whether we're going to move in a model where university is less accessible, becomes elitist, sort of betrays a vision of the campus, a campus where people fought against racism, where people fought in solidarity with social movements around the world, and that was seen as a good thing. That's seen as something that contributes to a real education. When we talk about contested space on campus, what's one important notion in the idea of contested space is having common areas, having areas where people can gather, where they're not being forced to buy something, where they're not being forced to do something, but simply to gather and hang out and to talk. That kind of spontaneous gathering space is essential. And what QPIRG Concordia and allies of ours that stand for movements of social justice and environmental justice would like to do is create spaces where everyone can access it, where everybody is welcome, and we can dialogue and talk about how we can make the world a better place.